Israeli bombings in Gaza killed 4 civilians, injuring others near hospitals. The United Nations extends Golan Heights peacekeeping mission and urges adherence to 1974 ceasefire agreement. And Egypt condemns Germany's attack, expresses solidarity and denounces violence. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Israeli bombings in Gaza killed 4 civilians and injuring others near the hospitals. 4 civilians were killed and others injured in a bombing by the Israeli occupation forces northeast of Palestinian Rafah city near the Martyr Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza Strip. The local sources reported that an Israeli drone targeted Khirbat al-Ats northeast of Gaza, killing 2 and injuring others. Additional injuries were reported when another drone struck Absan al-Khabira east of Khan Yunis. More details and injuries occurred in an Israeli raid near Kamal Adwan hospital in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has announced that Israeli occupation forces committed 3 massacres in Gaza. According to the ministry, these attacks claimed the lives of 21 people and left 61 others injured in the past 24 hours. Gaza-based health authorities have confirmed that the Palestinian death toll from the Israeli onslaught since October 7th has surpassed 45,227, with over 107,573 injuries. They added that Israeli occupation forces committed 3 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip over the past 24 hours, resulting in the deaths of at least 21 Palestinians and the injury of 61 others. The Palestinian civil defense has accused Israeli forces of killing Palestinians in Gaza and leaving their bodies in the streets, obstructing efforts to evacuate them. It further stated that Israeli occupation forces are preventing rescue and medical teams from reaching the bodies, even targeting them with direct gunfire. The civil defense stressed that such actions violate both divine laws and international humanitarian principles. Israeli occupation forces have arrested at least 25 Palestinians from various areas of the West Bank, continuing their ongoing crackdown on the local population. According to the Palestinian authorities, Prisoners and Ex-Prisoners Affairs Commission and the Palestinian Prisoners Society, the detention concentrated in the village of Barqa in Nablus, while the rest were distributed across the governorates of Jenin, Bethlehem, Tulkarm and Jerusalem. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has appealed to the international community to bring aid, medicine and food to Kamal Adwan Hospital in the Gaza Strip. The ministry stated that shooting continues around Kamal Adwan Hospital, with occupation shells hitting the third floor and entrances, causing panic. The ministry added that the hospital urgently needs maintenance supplies to ensure electricity, water and oxygen amid a severe shortage of medicines and painkillers. It also condemned Israel's violation of international law by targeting medical centers and preventing rescue efforts. UNRWA Senior Emergency Officer Louise Wateridge has warned that hunger and dire living conditions worsened by heavy winter rains and ongoing hostilities continue to endanger lives in Gaza. UNRWA's Wateridge stated, "An entire society here is in graveyard. Over 2 million people are trapped, deprived of basic needs, with every path leading to death." She stressed the urgent need for aid to support Gazans repeatedly displaced by Israeli bombardment and vulnerable to the elements.
Facilitated to bring in enough shelter supplies.
UNICEF has stated that children in Gaza are cold, sick and traumatized. In a statement, UNICEF highlighted that hunger, malnutrition and dire living conditions continue to put children's life at risk. It added that over 96% of women and children in Gaza cannot meet their basic nutritional needs, surviving mainly on rationed flour, lentils, pasta and canned food, which gradually weakens their health. Head of the Sub-Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Gaza under the UN, Georgios Petropoulos, has condemned Israel's denial of aid movement in Gaza, calling it a violation of international humanitarian law and aid weaponization. Petropoulos emphasized that the current humanitarian situation in Gaza has worsened significantly since the beginning of the conflict. He noted that the UN's action have been met with indifference from Israeli side in Gaza, with the Israeli government failing to provide any meaningful support for the UN's humanitarian efforts in the Strip. The ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to escalate, with severe shortages of food, medicine and basic necessities. International calls for aid and the protection of civilians grows louder amid the conflict. The details.
Intensive efforts by the U.S. administration alongside mediators from Egypt and Qatar have been underway in recent days to push forward ceasefire talks before President Joe Biden leaves office next month. U.S. officials report that both Hamas and Israel are making concessions, though key differences persist. Repeated rounds of talks over the past year have failed, with Israel insisting on maintaining a military presence in Gaza, while Hamas demands the release of detainees before agreeing to troop withdrawals. So far, no significant progress was reported. U.S. official William Burns, after a brief visit to Doha, has left the region, though a U.S. delegation remains. The change of administration in Washington now, just weeks away, is driving urgency in the discussions. Both Israel and Hamas, along with mediators in Doha, are seeking to lay the groundwork for the next phase of negotiations. Key issues still divide the parties, particularly regarding the return of nearly 2 million Palestinians displaced by Israeli military operations and who will manage Gaza's borders and oversee the distribution of humanitarian aid. Another unresolved question is the future role of a Palestinian government in post-war Gaza, as both sides weigh the possibilities for authority and governance in the region.
Well, and for more analysis, we now move to Salma in our newsroom. To you, Salma.
Thank you, Mona. And for further analysis on the humanitarian situation in Gaza, we're joined from Gaza by the director of the Medical Relief Association in the Gaza Strip, Bassem Zakut. Mr. Bassem, thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And first off, can you provide an overview of the recent Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, particularly the bombings near the Palestinian side of Rafah and Kamal Adwan Hospital?
Yes, Israeli continue their airstrikes all the time. Today there is more house demolitions. It seems in area of Rafah, Khirbet al Adas, or to the eastern part of Rafah. I think they continue to erase all houses in Rafah to make Rafah as a buffer zone. In the north, the Kamal Azwan hospital is under attack since 75 days. And yesterday, today, there were some airstrikes around the hospitals, but there is no injured يعني as far as I know. The hospital, inside the hospital, there is around 72 injured in need for immediate evacuation from hospitals because the services inside the hospitals became to zero. There is no oxygen, there is no power to run the operations room, and there is a severe shortage in medicines and medical disposables, also as well as the shortage of the staff to carry a large life-saving operations. Uh, يعني in
Mr.
my
Bassem, regarding the civilian injuries and the process of retrieving the bodies, what are the main challenges faced by Gaza's civil defense teams as they try to assist the injured and recover the bodies?
يعني the civil defense they have the first issue that they are insecure while trying to save some lives or to visit some of bombed area to take some bodies under demolished houses. Security is a matter. Also, they lack the equipment and the stuff that they need to do their work. Most of their cars or heavy vehicles are not working, not functioning. They were bombed, and because the insecurity situations, they cannot reach all areas, and there is يعني rumors or there is a talk that there is bodies in the streets all over Gaza Strip in some of the buffer zone or the areas close to the Israeli army that they cannot remove. The bodies even they are under attacks of hungry animals in the Gaza Strip, and this is a very disastrous things that make even their work very difficult in terms of their mental status. The teams are very tired and they don't have the ability to continue their work without any improvement of the ground, the situation in the ground, mainly the security situations, because the continuous bombarding of the civil workers and health workers and the humanitarian aid workers and non-stopping this violation all the law, this is make a condition of the work very difficult for the humanitarian workers. More than 1,150 aid workers, they were died through bombs in their trying to reach civilians and save the lives of the from the Israeli attacks.
Yeah, building more on this with the Israeli occupation forces obstructing the efforts of the medical teams. If you can expand more on this, how are medical teams in Gaza being hindered in their efforts to rescue the victims of the airstrikes?
The medical teams in Gaza, they are trying to do their work according to the resources they have. With the limited resources, they modify and adjust their work to reach people in humanitarian areas or in the crowded where the people moving from the evacuations orders from the Israeli. The health system tried to build themselves in the what we call medical points, on-site medical points in shelters or through some of the mobile clinics that can work in the accessible areas. So people can attend the medical health. But this is
Now, Mr.
a little of
Bassem,
the
can you discuss the dire humanitarian conditions, especially in relation to food shortages and the impact of the winter rains, especially in Gaza?
this is a crisis. This is a big of the crisis that two issues are urging in the our living condition now. Mainly the acute food insecurity that affect mainly more than 90% of the population inside Gaza Strip, or in the lack of the protection from the cold weather, our winterization shelters mainly that affect mainly more than 70% of the Gazan populations. There is no chance to improve the humanitarian situations without reaching a ceasefire, in my understanding, because the Israeli continue to slow the process of incoming truckloads through Egypt or through Jordan, and it's not reaching people in most of the time because the delay. I think
Yeah, building more
the
on
need.
this point, the restricted movement of aid, what role is UNRWA playing in providing aid at the moment, and how has the situation worsened for civilians due to the restricted movement of goods and personnel?
Yani, UNRWA is try to distribute the available resources that they have in their storages and their warehouses. That I think it can respond to 10 or 15% of the population's needs. UNRWA also is affected by the Israeli policies against UNRWA, and they are not receiving their aids. I think there is a lot of the truckloads in the Egypt side or in the Jordanian sides are waiting to enter, waiting from but the Israeli is preventing
Lastly, Mr.
this because it's
Bassem, now I would like to shed light on the international community. How has the international community responded to the calls for aid and medical supplies for Gaza's hospitals, especially Kamal Adwan?
There are some attempts to help, especially in the Kamal Adwan. There is missions that are trying, but they need Israeli permission to reach Kamal Adwan. I think the approval rate was 6% of the request to Israeli side. This is yani the last mission was yesterday. They could bring some of blood units to Kamal Adwan hospitals, but the other thing they couldn't. They failed to enter. The international communities, they try to do their best, but everything in Gaza Strip need the Israeli permission. Without Israeli permission, so there is no one can work or do improvement or can visit operation areas. And especially there is no movement from south to the north. There is a checkpoints all over that separate Gaza Strip into 2 or 3 parts, and everything's without ensuring the security of the missions and the current attacks. So everything that the international community want to do, they want to make sure from the Israeli that they will not be attacked. So they are waiting for the Israeli permission, which is not very often that they are giving the permissions.
That was the director of the Medical Relief Association in the Gaza Strip, Bassem Zakut. Thank you so much for your insights and for all the information you provided us with. Now we're going to move back to Mona in the studio.
Thank you so much, Salma, for the analysis. And now we move to the latest developments in Syria. The United Nations Security Council has extended a long-running peacekeeping mission between Syria and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights for 6 months. In its resolution adopted on Friday, the Security Council urged both parties to adhere to the 1974 Disengagement of Forces Agreement and uphold the ceasefire. Director General of the International Organization for Migration, Amy Pope, has warned that Syria is currently incapable of managing the large influx of returning refugees. Speaking in Geneva shortly after returning from Syria, Pope said that the IOM does not encourage large-scale returns at the moment, as the country is not ready to absorb a large number of displaced people. Pope added it will overwhelm the country and it could risk greater, more disruptive impacts on a very fragile peace process. And moving on to Germany, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has condemned the Magdeburg Christmas market car ramming as a horrific crime, pledging a thorough investigation. The Friday attack left several dead and injured. Police evacuated the scene to investigate a suspected explosive, later ruled out. Hospitals and emergency helicopters mobilized as the car sped through crowds, with graphic images of the aftermath circulating online. Authorities revealed the attacker rented the vehicle shortly before the incident.
Für mich war das ein berührendes Gespräch mit denen.
Egypt has condemned Friday's car ramming incident in Germany's Mejdberg, which left numerous casualties and injuries. In the Egyptian Foreign Ministry statement, Egypt expressed solidarity with Germany, denouncing all forms of violence and terrorism, and extended condolences to the German government and people, and wished the injured a swift recovery. A Saudi source has told Reuters that the kingdom warned German authorities about the attacker and his extremist behavior, urging them to take precautions. The Saudi sources told Reuters that this came after the attacker posted content on platform X reflecting the extremist views and threatening security. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has expressed solidarity with Germany, where a driver rammed a car into a crowded Christmas market, killing at least 4 people. Speaking in Lapland, Meloni said this type of attack was not an isolated incident and that the governments needed to ensure the safety of our citizens, describing it as a security issue. Over 60 people were injured, some of them seriously, in the incident, local officials said. A young child was among the dead. And moving to the United States, Congress has passed spending legislation in a down-to-the-wire burst of activity that will avert a destabilizing government shutdown ahead of the busy holiday travel season. The Democratic-controlled Senate, in an 85-11 vote, passed the bill to continue government funding 38 minutes after it expired at midnight. The government did not invoke shutdown procedures in the interim. The bill will now be sent to the White House, where President Joe Biden is expected to sign it into law. The package had earlier cleared the Republican-controlled House of Representatives with bipartisan support.
60 affirmative vote threshold for the adoption of the amendments, that upon disposition of the Crapo amendment, Senator Lee be recognized to make a vote.
In South Korea, tens of thousands of anti-Yoon Suk-yeol protesters rallied and marched in the central Seoul, urging the South Korean court to uphold his impeachment. Yoon's presidential powers are suspended, but he remains in office. He has also not responded to attempts to contact him by the Constitutional Court, which decides whether to remove him from office or to restore his presidential powers. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Israeli bombings in Gaza killed 4 civilians, injuring others near hospitals. The United Nations extends Golan Heights peacekeeping mission and urges adherence to 1974 ceasefire agreement. And Egypt condemns Germany's attack, expresses solidarity and announces violence. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.